Well, hello there. This is Let Me Know How It Is, a podcast about all things geek. For its 20th anniversary, we spotlight the straight-to-video feature Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker. Thanks for listening. All right, so this is our first topic to actually focus on an aspect of the Timverse as a topic. For those who don't know what the Timverse is, it's essentially a shared universe of the DC animated cartoons that ran from Batman the Animated Series through Justice League Unlimited. Why it's called the Timverse? It's called that because it's named after producer Bruce Timm, who was the common producer through all of those shows. So with that said, I'm very excited. Zach Slater.
I'm Frank Melman.
This is Tommy Smithereens.
And I'm Clifton.
All right, so warning to everybody, this is going to be a long setup, so buckle in, everyone. Batman Beyond: Return of the Joker is a straight-to-video movie that spun out of the popular Batman Beyond animated series that aired on Kids WB in the late 1990s. In case you don't know the concept of Batman Beyond, it takes place 50 years after the events of Batman the Animated Series and sees a new teenage Batman named Terry McGinnis don the cowl and a futuristic batsuit to battle new villains in a futuristic Gotham City. He's aided by an 80-something-year-old Bruce Wayne as his mentor, man in the chair, and occasional culture clasher. So, Return of the Joker features the voices of Will Friedle, Kevin Conroy, Mark Hamill, Angie Harmon, and Dean Stockwell. It has story credits for Bruce Timm, Glenn Murakami, and Paul Dini, who all produced this film and the series along with Alan Burnett. Paul Dini would double as screenwriter for this project as well. And Kurt Gaeta is the director of this movie. He was a series director on the show's first season, but was pulled from directing rotation to work on this film as the production team was simultaneously in production for the show's second season and this movie. A lot of work, it sounds like. So, Return of the Joker has a bit of an interesting production history. The movie exists in two versions, the original release and an unrated, uncut edition, which came out 2 years later and has since become the definitive version of the film. We'll get into some of what the changes are, but what some of you probably already know if you're into this film is that it is heavily edited, the original version. It had some heavy edited mandates from executives to tamp down some of the darker elements, of which there are lots, to make it more kid-friendly. Online, you could find two different release dates, October 31st, 2000 and December 12th, 2000. Details are a little bit funny about this, but what I'm guessing happened here, this is just my theory, is that October 31st was most likely the original release date. And then the cut orders came, and then it got pushed back till December so that they had time to do all the edits and cuts to make it more kid-friendly. So that explains why December is the actual release date, which is 20 years ago this week. So I'm excited to get into it. Let's do it. What you guys think after rewatching this? And actually, tell us which version you guys rewatched first.
I watched the uncut.
Okay.
That was one that I had available. I was looking for it. I thought I had somewhere that I had both versions, but I couldn't find the highly edited one. So I watched the uncut one again. I still love it. It's still one of my favorite Bruce Timm, Paul Dini pieces ever done. I really just think it's one of the best that they for their all that stuff that they did collaboratively. Like even for something like Batman Beyond, I like as a series. It's not my favorite of all their stuff. But it definitely is one of their best. I think the best things they did together is this particular direct-to-video movie.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so you did uncut. I did uncut as well. Tommy, Clifton, which one did you guys do?
No, I did uncut.
I think I've only ever seen the PG-13 version. So I did find it streaming on Tubi, the free streaming service.
Mm-hmm.
So they have the PG-13 running there currently for free to watch for anyone who wants to go watch it.
Interesting. Because I was surprised that it wasn't on like HBO Max. And as far as I know, it's not still on. Is DC Universe still a thing? Or is that done?
DC Universe is still a thing.
Yeah,
and I think it was on HBO Max until like a few weeks ago. I think it had been on there and then got pulled.
Because I had that moment of, I can't believe that I can't go on DC Max or HBO Max immediately and go watch it. That really was kind of annoying to me. I had to watch it through our local on-demand cable stuff, which is not a big deal. I mean, it's there are bigger problems in the world, obviously, but it's still one of those. I was very surprised that it was not there and readily available.
Yeah, it's just kind of annoying how all this DC stuff keeps shuffling on and off of HBO Max for now.
Yeah.
Hopefully they find a permanent home and keep it there.
It does. It's hard to keep track of where all of it is, but
Yep.
you know, I'm sure it's all going to be HBO Max soon.
Eventually. Yeah.
But yeah, so I actually don't know what the differences are between the unrated version and the PG-13 version, because I think I've only ever seen the PG-13 version.
Oh,
You've never seen the uncensored?
I don't think so.
There's a lot. There's
yeah. I took notes on that.
There's even changes that are not very obvious.
Yeah.
Even still. So I'm going to recommend a video. We'll put it up on letmeknowhowitis.com for you guys to check out. There's a video that's on YouTube that's every change, like side by side. They have the uncut version and the original version sort of like side by side, and they'll show you like the dialogue changes, and you'll see that there's even like there's punches cut out of fight scenes and stuff like that to kind of like tone down the violence. It's funny. It's interesting.
Yeah. I looked at that video. I took notes as to what exactly they took out. And it's crazy to see what they added to. Like, for example, they put seatbelts in when Terry and Terry's in the Batmobile, or when he's driving Bruce Wayne.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then there's stuff like anything blood related is taken out completely.
Yeah, that was the big one that I remember from the original. Because when I was still working at the comic shop, that we were like when this first came out, and that was the thing was you watch the video cassette. You know, that's how old this is. And then I remember Zach and I were talking about this earlier. The idea that when I remember at conventions for a while, the uncut was making the rounds before it came out officially. So you could like buy it unofficially bootlegged at shows to get the uncut one. And then I was, and again, it's such a stark difference. And I don't even want to. I wish I had known Clifton, because I don't really want to talk on what the differences are, because they're pretty stark in some scenes.
Yeah,
no, it's all right. It's all right. I'm interested, so you can talk about it.
But yeah, the blood is one thing. There's a big difference between the two. That fight scene in the middle, basically when you get the Batman the New Adventure stuff, that one's a big deal. Is the blood, and then the knife going into Batman's knee isn't in the uncut,
right?
And that's basically
the stuff that looks like the New Adventures of Batman stuff, which it's all Batman the animated series to me. So I just say that,
Yeah.
I'm just but if we're making the distinction, it's the Red Sky stuff, right?
Yeah, it's the Kids WB stuff when it jumped up when they were doing like Superman at the same time, production wise. Yeah.
When you get the Shark Eyes Joker design, and
bulkier Batman,
right? Bulkier Batman, and then Catwoman, everybody, and the much more the noose around the neck Scarecrow, all that stuff comes through that.
Yeah.
But like that's one of the things is they kind of like hint at later on is the reason why Bruce walks with the cane is from that fight. He got knifed in the knee, and that basically screwed things up for him. That was one of the the final straws that stopped him from being Batman. When he finds out what has been done to Tim, Batman just throws a pocket knife like directly at the Joker's like throat or face, and that's taken out of the edited one. So it's just like
the hole it leaves is still in the original.
Right, it's still
that's
there.
Interesting, right? So behind Joker's head in the original, there's a hole in the curtain, right? And in the uncut, that hole you see the hole is there because Batman throws a knife at him. So it's interesting that like in the original that it's just it's fine, like it just has a hole in it. Who cares?
Right.
but that's the reason.
Yeah. But the idea that Batman like basically, chose a killing blow at that moment is interesting. The fact that we actually see it happen.
Yeah. And then there's also how Joker dies. That was completely redone.
That's a big one.
The original. In which instead of Robin pulling out the gun and shooting him, he throws the gun away. You see Bruce smile. He rushes the Joker, pushes into like chemicals in which he inadvertently entraps himself in, slips and gets electrocuted off scene or off camera.
Yeah.
And then it's never. And then in subsequent in later scenes, when Joker's death is discussed, it says Robin defeats. They never outright say he shot him like in the original version says.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. I don't think we don't even get I can't remember. I haven't watched the uncut and the edited one in so long. We don't even get the last line from the Joker, do we?
No, it's edited out.
No,
Yeah.
no, yeah, because you see him slip. He's soaking wet in the original, and
Right.
he slips, and then he falls like onto the switch, and then it cuts away to like Batgirl,
Yeah.
and you hear him screaming,
And that's all you hear.
You know, it's not the same, and you know, but it's still an effective death to me. Like I still remember, even because I saw the original first when I was younger, and I was like, ooh, like
Right.
you know, it's sold completely by Hamill's scream as the Joker. I'm like, oh god, like it just sounds awful. Yeah, and then you see the uncut, and then it's like, oh wow, like it's so much worse what they did with it.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And then, not to skip over that scene a lot, but there's an earlier scene that they took out as well with Bonk the Clown,
Yeah.
in which he gets killed, and how they edited that is almost masterful, because when I saw the edited version, I just thought he like got knocked out and they threw him away. You know, at no point did I feel that he was dead. But they took out this side scene where he said he looks at Bonk and says, "Oh, you're dead." He just says it.
Right.
But
yeah, it's more explicit in the uncut, because he shoots the, like, if you haven't seen it, we're going to spoil it. The gun, which has got the orange tip around it, which I like.
Yes.
Like it's a toy, which is interesting. And it's the bang flag, you know, the Joker that you've seen Joker shoot 100 times, that, you know, as a gag. But then the flag is like a harpoon, that shoots out of it, and it goes into Bonk's chest like one of the henchmen, and dies. That's in the uncut.
Right.
But in the original, it looks like he's gassed. So I always assumed in the original that he died too, just because we don't see him again.
Yeah,
and he's got the grin, but he's twitching and stuff in there, which is.
But it's the same gun from the flashback and the present in the future, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's the thing, is that, you know, I think it's interesting too, is the idea that it's the exact same gun. So, but which is interesting. Again, as we're going to spoil this, when you think about the reveal, you know, that they're both the same ones. But I always thought when watching the edited version that it's we had that moment of, usually you get that moment with the Joker victim, you know, basically laughs himself to death. And then the grin appears, and then we kind of like don't have that happen, but he has the grin. So maybe I don't know. In my mind, I guess I thought it was kind of a streamlined death,
right?
Even though it's still kind of a classic Joker death.
Yeah. You're
talking about the harpoon.
Yeah, I'm talking about in the edited version when he dies. It looks because it's kind of a thing where you know, it's almost, you don't really get you don't get that classic laugh to death bit with the Joker.
Well, yeah, I mean, but even with the harpoon death, what gets me too is that he's smiling there also, and I'm just like, okay, I guess it's treated or something,
right? Exactly.
Like it's dipped in a toxin or something like that.
Like a poison dart.
Yeah. But the crazy part too with the edits is what they subtly do in those edits. Like, for example, remember that scene in which Terry sees Ace watching cartoons for some reason?
Yes. I love. I don't know why I love that scene of him watching that. In the uncut, it's Bugs Bunny, right?
Oh no, in both it's Bugs Bunny.
It's the same cartoon.
Okay. Yes, but the glaring difference in what is being said from the cartoon. Now, mind you, the funny part is I think both lines are from the cartoon. But in the unedited version, the dog that's in the ground says, "I wish I were dead."
Right.
Yeah.
As to think that's what Ace is saying. But in the edited version, he says, "I don't deserve to live."
Oh.
Right.
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah. That was like, I missed that.
Well,
I should have looked up what Looney Tunes cartoon is. I remember it. Like, I remember watching that one as a kid. But yeah, the setup is the dog thinks that he killed Bugs Bunny, and he's sobbing, and he's like, "I don't deserve to live."
Yes. Right.
Yeah. It is interesting that in both versions that they cut to a different, they use different audio from the same cartoon in different spots. But I like that scene, just like I like the weirdness of that jump cut.
Yeah, it's jarring watching it, being in one cartoon and going all of a sudden to a different cartoon of a different style completely.
Yes. Yeah.
But, you know, I like that Terry's checking up on Ace, because there is a, you know, if you watch the show, there's a little bit of a contemptuous relationship with them, right? There's you know, Ace does not love Terry, and I like that that it's a nice close scene where he's, he's checking up on him. And even though like the dog is watching TV, it's such a dog pose.
Right.
You know what I mean? That I see my dogs in there. I'm like, oh, like,
right.
Like, yeah.
I mean, they do share an adventure in the series in an episode that brings them closer together.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Ace is one of my favorite additions to Batman Beyond.
It's a good choice.
In general. Like, I think the idea that Bruce giving up, quitting, like hanging it all up and everything, and just being sort of like an old man in a house, and
right.
He's got a dog.
Right.
Doesn't have Alfred. Doesn't have any of the Bat family with him anymore. He's got a dog.
Yeah, he basically lives in a mansion full of ghosts with a dog.
Yeah,
that's how I always look at it when they finally see him in the first episode. I always think of that of like, nope, a lot of ghosts, a lot of demons, and that dog. I mean, I like the fact that, and I was talking a little bit of this with Tommy before we were doing this. There's a lot of like influence stuff, like from Batman Beyond, the Return of the Joker, that I think is kind of interesting. That basically, you might not really think about it at the time, but as if time has gone on and stuff that's been added to Batman.
Mm-hmm.
Like Ace isn't a new thing. Ace has been around as a character, quote unquote, from the 50s.
Classic Ace the Bat Hound.
Mm-hmm. Ace the Bat Hound since the Silver Age. But in Tomasi's run of Batman and Robin, you get Titus, which is a lot more another dog that they get for Damian that Bruce gets, because the boy needs a dog. And it's one of those things where Titus is much more like the Batman Beyond version of Ace. Yeah. Right? Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Like, and it's one of those things where I think it's I was again talking to Tommy about some of the stuff there's other stuff too I can mention. Do you want me to start mentioning influence, or should I wait till later?
Well, I mean, so really quick, I want to finish up though. Is there anything in the original that you think is better than how they handled it in the uncut? I'm just curious.
I like to say it's just how the fight scenes are handled. Now, mind you, in the original, they had anything that was over sexualized in a small sense, or even made anything that over brutalized women were taken out. So that one, no. But just certain fight scenes that were just gratuitous, in which the character was pummeled till he can't fight anymore. Like, for example, they take anything with Terry's girlfriend. I can't think of her name real quick.
Dana.
Her hair's being pulled when they try to stop her. Whenever the DDs fight, the scenes aren't as long as what they are. Like he beats them, but they don't really emphasize that in the edited version. And then there's one scene at the yacht, which one of the DDs lays in the bed just waiting for Pierce to Jefferson Pierce to come in. I think that's his name.
Jordan Price.
Jordan Pierce. I'm thinking Black Lightning. Wow.
Jordan Price. Yeah.
Jordan Price. Thank you. Is coming in, and she's like laying there waiting for him seductively. That's taken out.
I like that scene. I'm glad that one got put back in. Yeah.
Well,
I'm with you on some of the fights. I think I mean, I'm not going to blanket statement either that I like the fights better in the original or I like the fights better in the uncut. I think that there's I like a little bit of both of them. There are some times in the uncut where I feel like this may be going on a little too long, and I think some of the cuts might have been,
gratuitous.
I mean, I think that some of them were well done.
Oh, yeah,
I think I like the seatbelts.
Yeah.
It's a stupid, weird thing, but I like that the seatbelts are in the original. Yeah, because
it's
for me, animation's all about details.
It's flipped.
Right.
The seatbelts weren't in the original. Yeah,
they cut the seatbelts out in the uncut. Right. But basically they made them put it in for the original.
Yes.
And it's one of those things where like, it just looks like there's more care put into it that it's there. Like I like having it there. So it's a stupid, small little thing, but I like it better.
Right. Well, what I was going to say was about the over sexualized stuff. Like when Batgirl when they're looking for, in the 3 weeks that Tim is gone with the Joker and Harley, there's one point in the uncut where, Barbara goes to talk to, clearly they're supposed to be hookers. That's what they're supposed to be, right? And
in the uncut.
Standing on the street corner.
Yeah. So they're supposed to be, the designs were, and it's funny that the one, I'm like, even rewatching before I read about this, one of the designs was a design for Black Canary. Like it looks like the classic Black Canary look. And that they said that in the censored or the edited one, they change it just to a generic man and woman, like she's just talking to people on the street. Like, have you seen Robin?
Yeah.
Kind of a moment, which I thought was funny.
Yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of like it's surprising how many of like little things are in there that got tweaked around. I think like for me too, I like the brutality of the Joker Batman fight in the flashback sequence, you know, in the new Batman Adventures Red Sky moment.
Right.
But when he stabs him in the leg, it does make me go, I wonder really if that should have been the point where Batman gets the limp. Because in Batman Beyond, 80-something-year-old Bruce Wayne has a limp.
Right.
And walks around with a cane. And so the idea wasn't, and you never get an explanation for it in the show or anything like that. It's just, you're just to presume like, oh, it's just wear and tear of him fighting crime for so long that he's a little banged up. But the interesting thing is about like the limp there is that like presumably, and we know that like Bruce continues after this.
Right.
Because the pilot episode of Batman Beyond is Bruce in his, what, I guess in his 50s at this point, right?
Probably.
Like in the futuristic bat suit, like still fighting crime. And so that's one of those things where I think the leg stabbing might be better to not have in it.
Yeah.
For that reason.
I'm always amazed when he throws him through the theater, because that's the other thing about it that I noticed that I guess I never really put together before was all this is taking place in Arkham, but it's also taking place the Batman the Animated part with the Joker and the reveal about Tim. It's all taking place in an operating theater, and the fact that when he throws him through the window where the projectors and that where he basically the Joker bounces off those boxes to me is always one of those of like ugh. Like we don't really see that kind of moment in those in that series or those series for that matter.
Right.
I mean, obviously we see a fair amount of violence, but that was one that I'm even still now, like even watching it, I was like, oh my God, that's tough.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's a couple like unintended, like, ooh.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's intended. I don't know. I mean, I've never heard them speak on it, but like when Bonk has the harpoon in his chest, then they pull him off the table.
Yeah.
And like it looks like he falls on top of it.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, oh God.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And the same when Joker dies, like he falls forward like onto his chest. I'm like, oh God.
Yeah, oh yeah. That made it worse. That definitely if he wasn't bad off before, he's definitely done now. So and it was one of those things where it just from a standpoint of getting into the story part of it, I was watching it when I watched the opener and then before they get the credits, I'm amazed at how much like voice talent we have right off the bat.
Yeah.
Like, because Bonk isn't Bonk Henry Rollins?
Yeah.
Like that always makes me laugh because the only other thing I thought he did for animated stuff for DC was he's Cliff Steele in Brave and the Bold, right? When they do Doom Patrol, isn't it him?
I think he's Mad Stan also in Batman Beyond.
Okay. It's been a while since I've seen Batman Beyond the series, so
he's popped up in things, other things like he's Kilowog in Emerald Knights.
Oh, that's
straight
right.
to video.
No, you're right. That's right. I couldn't think of it.
He's really good as Kilowog too. I really like him in that. Yeah.
But it's like him and like you get Michael Rosenbaum doing his Christopher Walken as Ghoul, which is which is just fun.
It's a good Christopher Walken.
Yeah. It is. It's solid. And then Melissa Joan Hart is Dee Dee and Dee Dee, which is good.
D and D.
Yeah. Yes, D and D. No, I'm just like the thing about like I love about the open is it's one of those things where a lot of times you'll get even with the Jokers you get a lot of generic looking Jokers throughout the series, but for whatever reason like looks like time and care was put into the development of the design of these particular characters, and I'm always amazed that nobody at DC has brought them back to anything. They're not like I mean if we can have, and I say that as something like when we have like characters like they find a way to bring the Fatal Five into the main time stream. So there's no reason why they couldn't do the same thing with these characters. I just think visually they look really cool and different than most of your typical Joker henchmen or henchwomen for that matter.
Yeah. From the Joker gang.
Yes.
Except Terminal.
Except for Terminal. Terminal, I do love that episode. He's great.
I love the Terminal design too. Yeah, I love it.
But which was one of the episodes in the regular series.
Mm.
But yeah, a lot of the Jokers just kind of have a more generic design. So seeing each one of these Joker gangs with such a distinct design is interesting. And the spliced one. And Hyena,
that's what I was
which is
gonna say.
a throwback to the splicing episode.
Yeah, that's what I like too. There's a nice little world building bit with that too, where like he's like the Jokers are splicing now and
yeah. No, that's a good bit. I like that too. It's a good, it's a nice little callback to, what we've seen in the series.
the Chimera episode, I think is what it was called in the regular series, where people were splicing animal DNA and becoming like animal people.
It's Splicers.
Is it Splicers?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's the first episode of season 2, if I'm not, I could be wrong about that one, but yeah, it's a good one. It's a standout.
Right.
Yeah. I want to get into really quick why Joker coming back is so big for this. And I think the gut reaction is to, well, Joker's Batman's arch enemy. So of course it's a really big thing. Just by nature of it being the Joker, it's a big story. But the producers had an edict of when they were planning out Batman Beyond that they didn't want to do just like futurized versions of the Rogues Gallery. They didn't want to do like Riddler Beyond and Two-Face Beyond and Catwoman Beyond and stuff like that. So they were very, very picky about when villains showed back up. So I'm not going to say that like it never happened, because you do see some guys that Bruce fought pop up in the show. But generally speaking, I mean, they were very, very strict about like, we want to create new villains and we want Terry to have his own Rogues Gallery and stuff like that. So this is a big, like, oh, okay. They're actually like going to the well and pulling out like a big villain from Bruce's day, which is, just something that they didn't want to do on the show very often. Mm-hmm. So it's big for that reason too.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I like the idea of, because at first Terry's kind of flippant about the idea of the Joker being back at all, which I like in the idea that it's very much, no pun intended, the idea it's no laughing matter. Everyone, Barbara and Bruce are not, nobody thinks it's a good idea that the Joker, not a Jokers or somebody in a gang or someone just latching onto it. Someone actually is wanting to be or claiming to be the Joker is a big deal. And the fact that Terry doesn't get that quite at first is interesting. I mean, granted, it's kind of teenage, what do you guys know moment, but it's one of those moments again where I think it's interesting that this movie is not talked about more. Again, like I was talking a little bit about it, I was teasing the idea that I had a lot of influence comes out of this that it doesn't get credit for. Like, for example, I think the idea, I mean, the idea that the Joker's alone is a big deal. I think is something that like you can see like in the Watchmen series, like the HBO series, the idea that someone would emulate, obviously the Rorschach that we know it through the comic is not something to necessarily emulate, but the way that it can be turned. I mean, granted, they're all basically emulating the Joker, but it's a similar situation, right? I mean, I could argue. I think you could argue the fact that the Rorschach or the people that are wearing Rorschach mask in the HBO series is similar to the idea of the Jokers in Batman Beyond or in the Return of the Joker.
Right.
And that's just one. I mean, that was just one. I had others too.
Okay. No, go ahead.
Okay.
I want to hear it. Yeah.
Okay. So that was just one. That was one that I thought was kind of interesting. We could talk about the other one that I thought was kind of stood out to me watching it again, and now after all this other stuff has come along. Was that you get some, there's been some ideas about the Joker being immortal or being, or like if you've read Three Jokers, the idea that, there's a way for the Joker to exist outside of being, just the original Joker, or even Tommy, like in the Arkham game, right? We've talked about that too, where the Joker's able to, like, similar idea to Three Jokers, right? Where it can exist outside of being the original. It's one of those things where I think that really, this is like the place if you're going to treat it back to its source. I mean, this is one of the first times I can remember that someone, and again, we're spoiling it. So if you haven't seen it, now's a good time to go watch it. The idea that someone else, through genetics or through genetic engineering or, a combination of science and genetic engineering could be the Joker. It starts here. I mean, I kept thinking today about, is it possible that I'm not missing some other story?
No, I agree with you. It definitely starts there. Well, I like the fact of how they rule out all the other obvious tropes of when a person is resurrected, where Terry's in the car talking to Bruce is like, what is it, robot? I mean, he just throws out all the outlandish things that people bring back in order to justify his return without having aged 30 years upon his return.
Yeah, suspended animation. You're stuck in a nice flow for thousands of years or whatever, 100 years. Yeah, I like that bit too. But it's just one of those things where it sort of struck me as like, oh, well, that's where, that could be a place where this comes from, is the idea that, rather than the Joker lives forever, because for the longest time in the comics there was no body with the Joker, so that you figured when the Joker looked like he might have died, it's just a matter of time before he pops back up again.
Yeah.
This is one of the first places where they really were just like, yeah, but let's figure out a better way to do that than just being, we give you. And when you talk about the tropes of it, the other thing I thought that was interesting was the fact that, the big red herring in it is the idea that it's Jordan Price, right?
Yeah.
They go because they go out of the way to kind of he looks sort of angular face, kind of like the Joker. Obviously, they have Mark Hamill's voicing him, and they hit it a couple times, the idea that it may be him, but it's just a red herring and a means to and the other thing is that Bruce doesn't like him and he doesn't seem to like Bruce, so
he was just shifty.
He's kind of a shifty kind of.
He has a motivation to get Bruce out of there,
right?
Yeah, as well. Yeah,
right.
Well, it's funny because that was a deleted scene in which they step into a little bit more where you get the inkling that it could have been him.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then that's when, if you ever get the chance to see the deleted scene, that's also on YouTube.
Okay.
But I'm glad they took it out because the second half of the scene, it shows Bruce verifying that the Joker's dead, which wouldn't be the case all those years because he actually goes back to a decayed Arkham.
Yeah. There's even after the uncut came out, there's still stuff that was written that got cut from the movie for time, right? And there's some scenes that made it as far as the animatic phase. And I think some of this is on the DVD for the uncut version. I think that they have the two scenes that you're talking about, Tommy, the Jordan Price scene and which I think would have been good to include because I think it cements Jordan a little bit more as the red herring, right?
Right.
I think he's the audience is reminded of him more often. I think that right now that he's kind of, you forget that he's there as a part of the story. And I like the eeriness, the perceived eeriness, because I mean, you can't, there's no talking in the Bruce Arkham sequence. But I think it would have been cool. This is the one movie that I think that the 76-minute runtime, I think, does it a disservice.
Yeah,
a bit.
Yeah.
I think that had they had some more time to include those scenes and all, and this is something I found out looking into this, which I can't believe I didn't know, but they released the screenplay.
Okay.
For this movie, the Paul Dini screenplay, like as a book. Which I'm clamoring for stuff like that. I can't believe I didn't know it existed. But
right. Yeah, we talked about that.
Yeah. In the screenplay though, so the screenplay has like those scenes in there that were all cut out of the movie. And there's even some dialogue changes that were done in the original draft that they still changed for the uncut. And so all of that stuff is in that screenplay.
Okay.
And it sounds like that there was a lot of like really cool stuff that we didn't get. And this is the first time, like I generally fall in the camp of like deleted scenes are cut for a reason. Like,
right.
like you don't need it necessarily, but there's a lot of these and I'm just like, man, it would have been so cool if that was in the movie. And like,
right.
No, I agree with you with that first part with the deleted scene in which Price, you get the nod that you get the inkling that he might be the Joker. But the second half of that I didn't like because he goes to see the body of the Joker that would died years ago, and he's still there, just a skeleton with the jacket on still.
Yeah, after 50 years.
Yeah, exactly. That's like really no one's gonna steal the body, do anything, and
nobody's gonna do anything with the land. Yeah,
right. That was And Arkham
I think that there's ways to play with that scene, but I like the idea of it. I like the idea of Bruce going back to, probably the most traumatic spot in his history since, his parents dying in Crime Alley, right? Like,
probably.
Well, at least in that universe,
yeah.
But and another thing that I noticed that was interesting to me it made me think of other stuff that's come along since then was in the opening scene, like when we first get introduced to the Joker, there's no signature laugh, right? There's no like moment of him, throwing his head back and cackling. He's just sort of upset. He kills Bonk, and then he starts like, "I'm tan and rusted, and I'm getting right back to it." That whole bit, it's great. And then when they go to when he first appears at the thing where Bruce is giving the speech, there's a bit where they have like a sound stinger, and it's kind of like distortionist, like it's kind of like a little bit of, it's like off-putting. It reminded me of the stuff we get in Dark Knight when Heath Ledger's Joker first appears, where it's that music tag or whatever, that Discord tag that they put in that basically is supposed to put you off kilter because the Joker that would be that disturbing to you in real life, is how I always took it.
Right.
But it's one of those things where I noticed it here, and then he has the big laugh right after it.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, but Christopher Nolan didn't watch this.
Okay. No, I know. Yeah, I'm just saying.
Saying
it was one of those things where it was eerily, familiar to me from that. Obviously, that wasn't even a glimmer in anyone's eye at that point.
Yeah. Jonathan Nolan might have watched it.
No, you're 100% right about that, Clifton. I think actually chances are pretty good Jonathan Nolan has seen it, but
right.
But what I was going to go back to was when you mentioned how the Jokers reminded you of the Watchmen. What I took from that is it's an interesting juxtaposition because Batman in his hay influenced the youth. Right. Well, when he starts being Batman, the Joker influences youth. That's how I saw this. That's the switch or whatever that I saw.
I mean, you could argue that it's a mirror image of the Sons of the Bat out of the Dark Knight Returns.
Yes,
you could argue that, but I mean, it's one of those things where I look at it more along the lines of, I agree with you. It's an interesting thing instead that Batman, that the youth, the rebellion movement went with the Joker instead of what would kind of be the establishment. But in Dark Knight, especially, Batman is played up as being Dark Knight Returns. Batman is definitely played as the anti-establishment hero, whereas Superman is like the toady for the toady, the toady for the government, right?
Yeah.
I think about that sometimes too. I mean, that's Frank. That's 100% where I was thinking about sometimes too. Like sometimes I think about like what would I do like if I got Batman Beyond or something like that. Mm-hmm. And part of me does think like, would I do a Batman gang? And part of it is like, yeah, of course, it feels like the obvious, like, there's a Joker gang, so of course we got to do a Batman gang, right? Mm-hmm. And so it's kind of stupid for that reason, but it is the nod to that the Sons of the Batman stuff from Dark Knight, which I do think is cool, too.
And the Joker gang is clearly a bit of a nod to Akira, which has the clowns gag set in Tokyo.
Right.
There's a whole gang in Akira that paints their faces like clowns, and they're called the Clowns, and their leader is Joker, so he's a reference to Joker. It's like it's a back and forth reference tribute.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's a good point too, because I had forgotten about that entirely, Clifton. But there's like the beam, like the destruction of the city stuff too. Like that's all straight out of Akira too, right?
Yeah,
like,
there are definitely influences.
Yeah.
Yeah, in rewatching that scene, and again, I remember that the beam is obviously tearing. Like I remember the chase scene on the bridge, or the overpass, I should say. Right. I remember all that stuff, and then I had that moment of like, my God, there's a lot of collateral damage.
No, I had the exact same thought watching it this time, where I made it known, like, how many people died in that scene? There's just buildings going down left and right.
Yeah, it's vaporizing buildings left and right in that scene.
They say that in the commentary too.
Yeah.
When you're watching it, they're like, oh, all those buildings are empty, right? And they're like, yeah, sure.
right, exactly.
That's what you tell standards and practices.
Right.
Yes, everyone got out in time. Everyone got out. Well, there's one scene where like it goes through a park and people are running. I'm like, those people did not get out of the way of that laser.
Right.
No,
they did not.
Remotely.
Clearly did not get out of the way of that poor laser. So, but yeah, that was the one. Like I said, that thing of like, I mean, it's a cool scene, but again, when I started, like the total started to rack up in my head. I was like, oh my God, that's a lot.
But you want to know what I love? I love that bit on the ship where it starts.
Yeah.
Right. And Terry as Batman is with Jordan.
Mm-hmm.
And you just see the light from the windows come from the beam. And I'm like, oh man, like it's so beautiful.
Yeah, it's a good scene.
So cool. There's
some really good scenes in the entire thing. Like one of my favorite sequences in all of the Tim and the Timverse stuff is the scene with the projector. Like I think that scene when he's like showing the home, like the quote unquote home movie the Joker is in the operating theater, Batman, they basically says this line about, just a kid in a Halloween costume, crying out for mommy and daddy. That whole sequence to me is some of the best animated stuff that they ever got done, I think.
Yeah.
It's up there for me with like Heart of Ice. Like I think it's that well done. Because I think that the lighting on the Joker, the lighting on Batman, all of that sequence up to the point where he like I said, tosses him out onto the boxes.
Yeah.
Is just, oh my God, it's beautiful. It's horrifying.
There's a lot of cool stuff. The Joker intro scene is really cool too, where like he's kept in the dark, you know, and they do like neat stuff with his eyes to make him look sinister. But like, yeah, I think that there's some really, really cool lighting stuff in this movie that's not like color scripting either. Like what I say in past episodes of like Scooby-Doo Mystery Incorporated, like, which is a great example of that, where you're adjusting the color to make it look like different colored lighting. And there's not a ton of that. It's just sort of like, it's drawing of shadows more in this than it is actually like adjusting. Oh no, actually, no, that's not true, because there's like the nightclub stuff, which is all like red and yellow and everything too. So forget what I'm saying.
No, I said the nightclub. That was what I was going to say. The nightclub scene is definitely an example of them playing with that stuff. I mean, that and like the classic scene, the classic bit of Terry being in the cockpit of the Batmobile. That whole playing with the reds and it's all red and black. I love that stuff. I mean, and I say classic when the fact that it was establishing that show.
In the Batcave is always kind of purpley. Too. Yeah, I don't know what I'm talking about. Forget what I said.
I always loved the rave scenes, though. I forgot how many rave scenes there were in this movie.
Yeah,
I always loved the Batman Beyond raves.
I have a fun rave scene note that I don't know.
Okay.
Tommy, do you know what I'm talking about?
Which part you talking about?
With the lava lamp
when he kicks it.
No, so there's a funny note about the there's a big lava lamp set piece.
No, you told me this. No, it replaced something.
It was right. So for the listeners, it's a big lava lamp set piece, like in the nightclub where all these scenes are taking place, right? But it was originally supposed to be like a slushy machine.
Yes, you told me this a long time ago.
Yeah, it was supposed to be a slushy machine, and then standard of practices were like, well, we don't want it to look like that they're drinking, and they're like, all right, we'll turn it into a lava lamp.
Yeah, it's a giant margarita machine.
Yeah,
which actually makes more sense, but sure.
Right.
Yeah, which I thought that was really cool too. I'm like, I wish that was in there. Like,
if anybody's been to Vegas, they definitely would have went with the slushy machine as opposed to the lava lamp.
Yeah.
Which is absurd not to see anybody in a nightclub drinking.
Right.
But it's funny because they don't have that.
But they're high schoolers though.
They're too busy dancing.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's funny because they don't worry about that in Superman, the animated series, when Batman and Superman, when he's showing him the kryptonite, he throws it in a drink.
Right.
Oh, it's a great sequence too. I love that
sequence. Yeah.
I love
that's what
that
I was like
too.
Yeah.
Batman goes shake down some guys at a go-go club.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Girls in the
but
cage,
I love but in the Return of the Joker sequence, I love the transition of that where we're in the Batcave and Terry's with Bruce, and and he's like, who sleeps anymore? And then it's like cut to the club where he's like out, like in a booth. And which was that was Terry and Dana's relationship where she was it hit me that watching this, that she's so much more of a Mary Jane character than I realized.
Right.
Just without really the chances to be like kind of sweet, unfortunately, I think.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
She puts up with a lot of stuff.
That was what I was going to say. She's very long suffering. She puts up with a lot of nonsense.
She does.
Yeah. With no explanation.
Right. And we don't really get a payoff until like after, I think the thing we finally get a moment of it is like is it epilogue?
Yeah, in the Justice League episode.
Yeah. That's the only place I can think of where it finally is like, where when you're told that they're no longer together, you kind of understand why.
Yeah.
Well, to me, I thought they weren't supposed to be together, especially when he goes after what's the name from the I think 10 from the Royal Flush Gang. So for them being betrothed seemed weird.
Yeah, Melanie.
Yes.
Melanie from the Royal Flush Gang. 10.
Yeah. 10.
Right.
Yeah, she's great. I love Melanie.
I like her better than
Dana.
Dana. Yeah.
We all did.
Well, I guess it was supposed to be the whole I guess Catwoman dichotomy thing.
Kind of, yeah.
Yeah.
But and then this you can tell me if this I think my last influence or lasting echo from this is there's a scene where it's they're in the Batcave, it's Terry and Bruce, and Terry's put it all together. He basically has the moment after he's like, why did he destroy the only costume he destroyed was the Robin costume in the in the cabinet, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he looks, and if you're familiar at all with the Batman Who Laughs stuff, and the extension beyond that, and when basically the Batman Who Laughs becomes a much multiverse threat, and you deal with the Robins. Basically, Terry looks at Bruce and he's saying the thing about the costume in the cabinet, and he says, "Hey, I hate to say it, but I think your Robin has turned to a bitter old crow."
It's a good line,
and that's what the Jokerized Robins are.
It's a direct pull. It's a current,
the Robin King or whatever it is.
Yeah, there's the Robin King, and there's like at one point the Batman Who Laughs has like various multiverse Robins, and he's basically like Tim. Again, spoiler, like Tim is Jokerized and turned him into the Crows. That's basically like his they've got him on. They're basically like these Jokerized Robins. They're terrified looking on like they're on chains or chained up, and they're the Crows.
Right.
And it never occurred to me until I rewatched this. I was like, oh wow, I wonder if that's where if Snyder pulled that from here.
And the Joker looks like the Crow in this movie.
Yeah, there's some of that too.
Yeah, I love the Joker design in this.
Oh, I do too.
I like the all black
buzz cut.
It's just with the hints of purple.
Yeah, it was an interesting take to adapt him to the future world that they'd created, but still make him be clearly the Joker.
Right.
And not like too much of a new future world. It was an interesting choice.
But yeah, that was the one that I was like, oh wow, that's more recent than anything. Is that it could be like you said, Tommy. It could be a direct pull from this.
Yeah, especially with the outfit they give, because he has doesn't he have a cloak of like looks like a crow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the crows themselves look like they got like a traditional like Robin, Dick Grayson short pant Robin look to them. But then like the Robin King is much more of a, like a further extension of that. So again, I could just see where the seeds of the idea might have come from, and it never occurred to me until I rewatched it.
Right. No, I think it's spot on with the where it can come from.
Yeah,
because I didn't even pull that from there.
Yeah. And I know Snyder would have been a fan of this stuff.
Well, I mean, the stuff that he leans into for Batman, I could imagine that of all the Joker stuff, because he's done a lot of Joker stuff, that this wouldn't be something that he, has watched before. Yeah, I could be wrong, but yeah, those are the ones that. And again, like I said, but something I do have to say that before we get into anything else, I am stunned at how boring the opening credits are from a technical standpoint.
Right.
I cannot believe that they did all this great work and all these designs and everything, and they just sort of punted on the credits. Like as cool as like the opening is for Batman Beyond.
Yeah.
Right.
As cool a sequence that is, and how how that was put together and everything, and for them to just be like, yeah, credits. It's Batman Return of the Joker. It's done by this person.
Though.
The only thing I can think is that, like, at the time, that's what movie opens kind of were.
Right.
Like, movie opens weren't fancy. So, like, that they were trying to be cinematic by making it understated. But in comparison to their excellent show open, it's just comes off lackluster.
They talk about it in the show, in the movie commentary.
Mm-hmm.
And it's one of those situations. There was plans to do something more grandiose.
Right.
And just they ran out of time. And so they did it that way, right? They just kind of had the black background and the white letters and everything, which...
They should have had Darwin Cook do something on his kitchen again. That's how they made the original opening. It was great.
They should have.
Put the Joker and the Lazy Susan again and get it done.
It was awesome.
I agree. But no, because I was thinking about it, and it was one of those things where one of my biggest regrets about this, granted, I saw it when it first came out. I was telling Zach the story today about my roommate at the time we worked together at the comic shop, had picked up and flipped through the comic adaptation, was like, oh, and I was like, what? And he's like, I just really wish I hadn't seen that scene. And it was the scene with Tim in the flashback. But it was a moment where we were talking about just the idea that one of the biggest regrets I have about this is the fact that we never got, as far as I know, it's never been in a major, like a movie theater release.
Right.
I would love to see this, blown up on a big screen and seen in a theater. Yeah. And it's one of those things when I think about the openings for, granted, the opening for Mask of the Phantasm isn't all that, it's not fancy, but it's still stuff they put time. Like I think it's all computer stuff, right?
Yeah. Well, that was the reverse. That was the complete inverse of this. That was straight to video. And then once they found out they were getting theatrical, they got a little bit extra money, and then they did the CG sequence afterward.
Okay. Because granted, I wouldn't want that. But again, like I said, even if we had just gotten like the Batman Beyond open with Return of the Joker, I would have been happier than just like, yeah, it's Batman Beyond Return of the Joker.
Yeah.
The credits are like, again, from just from a technical standpoint.
I mean, the moral of the story of this is that like other people had their hands in this stuff, and and it sounds like, you know, even after the version we got, that there was still a lot that they wanted to do that they couldn't. But I'm with you. I think that, you know, a sequence that would have been more in line with the awesome Batman Beyond open for the show would be cool. But I'm with Tommy, though. I think the music's great.
Yeah, I do too.
I mean, this is one of my favorite scores ever. I have the CD for this score, and I like that, you know, the movie's very much a mixed bag of both eras. And I like that the music reflects that it's, you know, you get the rock elements and you get the orchestral stuff, and it's kind of mixing together in spots.
Who was it that scored this one?
This was the guys that did the show. So it was Christopher Carter and I'm blanking on all the other names. It's two other people. I'm sorry. Lolita Manis, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think she was on it as well. Yeah, it's an awesome score. Great score. Yeah, it's a good movie. It's a really, really good movie.
It's a great movie.
I like that Terry's able to get to the Joker in a way that Bruce can't or hasn't. You know what I mean? In that fight, in the end fight. That's
something I was thinking about today. I was going to say that, the idea that Tom and I were talking about earlier. But yeah, I agree that I like the ending of it, and I don't like the ending of it. Like that's one of my that's one of the moments where I'm kind of like, even watching it today, I was kind of like, eh. But Tom and I were talking about the idea that if you squint hard enough, you could still think, as watching it today, it still holds up as a quote unquote future story, where a lot of future stories don't always hold up as well. But in watching it again today, I get the idea that Terry gets at him through, you know, being, you know, mocking him, because obviously we don't really have that with Bruce. Bruce doesn't really mock him, but I just, it's one of those things where I like the ending of it, but at the same time, I've never really been satisfied with it. I still don't, it's one of those things where clearly from a writing standpoint, the idea that Ace is just in the car, like happens to be in the Batmobile with him and happens to be there and happens to bite through that metal thing to free him has never worked for me. I've never understood why Ace is there.
Right.
Other than we need a way for Terry to get out of this, guys. Yeah. Other than we need him to serve story.
So like when he makes the concerted effort to take Ace, I was wondering like, what's he need Ace for? And then the only thing I could think of is it's because of the Splice Joker, the hyena.
Right.
Because that's who he sticks Ace on. So I think that was the explanation. But I was wondering too, I'm like, it's a little conspicuous.
Yeah. Right. That was my only thing.
Well, I took it as basically this is the only backup Terry's ever going to get. So why shy away from it? Terry's always done it by himself. So that's his Robin, so to speak, as somebody that can take the heat off him while he can attack specific people and move on. But to me, this is the most Spider-Man he's ever been. With the quips and the way to disarm the main villain in order to get at him while he's worried about what he's saying. But
it works for me. It works for me because of one line. It's because he says, "You're not funny, Joker." And that's the one where I'm like, yep, that would get to him. That would 100% get to him.
Sure.
Like, you know?
Yeah. But I just like the fact that it emphasizes his obsession with the original Batman. It sort of brings him down a notch in the sense that it was more so, it just made me feel that it was more so a thing between Batman and, Joker and Batman, and that other people are inconsequential. But what's weird to me too is this Batman doesn't care if people die villainous.
Right.
Because if you look at the series, barely anybody survives Terry.
True.
It's like, in some cases, it's almost a one and done. Like when Terry confronts somebody, 9 times out of 10, they're not walking away from it. Somebody's picking up a body bag for said villain.
Right.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was, I mean, I like that line, Zach. I like the line of the, you're not funny, Joker. It almost is like, I almost it had been, something along the lines of from Mad Love. Remember the bit where Joker gets upset with the idea that he freaks out on Harley and says, "It's not funny if you have to explain it," or something along those lines. So I get what you're saying, but like I said, I still, even today, I was still like, I think the ending could have used another pass.
Very well could be. I think that there's some strong elements to that. Like I said, like I like that you're not funny, Joker, but I like that he strips it down to also being that like you're kind of hacky.
Yeah,
like you like your whoopee cushions and and stuff like
and your joy buzzers.
Yeah, and I like that it's like you're a comedian, really, and and you're doing this kind of shticky stuff.
Yeah,
and it is like I've never quite heard that when the common, especially in the 90s, was like the Joker's scary, right?
Sure.
And he's a sadistic killer and everything like that. And this as far as the animated goes was like the farthest we've ever gotten to that.
Right.
To that point. And I like that aspect of it. I like those elements to it.
Yeah. Well, I see it as just the younger generation. As we get older, stuff like, let's say, for example, stuff that we would be rated as PG-13 wouldn't rank as that brutal with the younger generation because they've seen far worse. So to show them something that somebody did in the 70s and be like, what, that was scary?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that every morning before I go to school.
They did worse in some of the animated DC stuff that came out like last year.
Yeah.
Like some of that stuff, like Apocalypse War and stuff like that. Like there's some junk in that I'm like, oh God.
Yeah. That would have been edited out when this dropped.
But I think the emotional core, that's the real that's where it really digs in the knife, so to speak. Pardon the pun, you know what I mean? But like is the emotional stuff, is what he does to Robin and how he gets to Batman and stuff like that. And I think that's as emotional and that's as hard hitting as really anything that they've done too.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we escaped the biggest elephant in the room with this series. We basically get a Joker that tortures children.
Yeah.
And then we just
I mean, it's definitely a step farther. I mean, I think it's as bad as him, beating Jason to death practically with the crowbar. I would say this is worse.
Yes. Yeah. Because not only does he beat him, not only does he beat Robin,
right?
He electrocutes him, and then he puts the Joker serum on.
Right.
Well, and there's, I mean, I haven't read the new like Batman the animated series, like Batman Adventures Continue stuff. The I guess the sequel series, the revisiting of Batman animated series and comic books that they're doing now, that Dini's doing with Ty Templeton and stuff like that. So I don't know if that ties into Return of the Joker at all or not.
So far, no. Not what I've read. It hasn't.
But I'm curious what the moments after the flashback sequence would have been like. Like Joker's dead. He's done this stuff to Tim. And then there's that line where Barbara says that like the only person we told was my father, the original Commissioner Gordon and stuff like that. Right. And Tommy, like you going like he's torturing kids. That made me go like, wow, what was that conversation with Batman and Gordon like?
Sure.
When he came into the aftermath of that.
Well, the other thing is the fact that they mention they make a point. I paid attention to this. They make a point of saying he was with the Joker for 3 weeks. He was gone. Like they couldn't find him for 3 weeks. And then he was with Leslie for a year.
Yep.
Right.
To try and get better. Like that was the one that got me. I was like, wow. So Leslie was working with Tim for a year after this trauma to try and, get some kind of normalcy back in his life.
Yeah.
That, I mean, that's another one. I'm like, how do you, how would that have played out?
Yep.
Yeah.
So,
but no, going back to what Zach was saying, how can Gordon, knowing that Batman
right,
put Robin in this position and this is the outcome, how do you allow that to occur from that point forward? Is that the end of Robin's from that point forward in that universe?
I'd imagine.
From what we know so far, yeah.
Yeah, I think Barbara says he doesn't take anyone until Terry.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah. He doesn't take anyone until Terry. I mean, at that point, like Damian didn't exist, and and Harper Row and Cassandra, all of the like, none of those characters were created in the books at that point. I mean, Cassandra might have been out maybe the year before this was released, but certainly not when it was in production.
And then you have Barbara. After seeing that, does Barbara put on the tights again? Because after that,
there's a lot to play with still, I think.
Well, I mean, because the other thing is, like, what I was going to say was the fact that they even mentioned the fact that it sounds like Tim wanted to go back out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Bruce was like, no.
You're done. Outright.
You're done. Yeah, you're done. And I would imagine, like, he said that to him, like, you're done, and then I'm not, like you said, I'm not taking anybody else on.
Yeah.
So.
Good movie. Check it out. Return of the Joker is awesome.
There was one thing, like going back to the plot of how Joker did put the serum and the chip in Tim to kind of resurrect himself later. Going back to the very early in the movie when Terry says Jokers are splicing now, talking about the hyena, I caught it this time and thought, is that them like tipping it? Is that them foreshadowing that?
Could be.
That's what Joker is this time?
Right.
Is he's basically a splice?
Yeah. That's a good pull.
Yeah, that's a good point too. I like also when that little chip gets destroyed, there's like a little smiley face.
Yeah.
Like in the design where like the chips that remain is like kind of a smiley face. Yeah, before it explodes or fizzles out, like the Mission Impossible like self-destruct thing.
Well, I mean, there's that, and then there's the one when he's talking about what target to hit first, right? Because there's a little bit of that too when he's making it looks like it could be like I thought for a minute it was going to be a smiley face when he was doing the targets of
the
like
targeting sites,
of like his Dana or the hospital or his mom and his brother or all three.
Yep.
When he says that. But yeah, I like that. For me is one of those, and I'm trying to think what was the other one. There was something else around that scene. I thought, let me look at my notes real quick. But yeah, that's what it was. The idea that they obviously they set up the red herring of Jordan Price, and then they bring in Tim, and then even then after he's seen, he knows that Tim is working with the Joker. They still give you another moment of like, oh wow, the big reveal is not just that he's working with him, he is. Mm-hmm. He is the Joker. I've always enjoyed that reveal. I think that one, because again, it kind of, as an audience, you kind of like, oh, okay, well now I know that he's working with him. That's too bad. And then it turns out, oh no, he is indeed, the Joker. I've always liked that too.
Would have been nice to get Dick in the movie though.
Sure. Oh, well. Yeah. Sure would have. We
just get one line. Dick Grayson left to, establish himself in another city, which again, in the 90s, I think 90s Batman is kind of all over this movie in a weird way too. I mean, at that point, Dick Grayson was Nightwing in Bloodhaven,
right.
in a series that was, still going very strong at that point.
At that point, yeah. Well, I mean, we do get the other line about, well, Nightwing's got some stories too.
Yeah.
I was like, what is that?
Yeah,
mean?
I want to know what that's all about too. But yeah, I mean, just the aspects too of Bruce being cold and really like kind of distant from the rest of the Bat family and stuff like that. Like, I mean, that stuff's like never completely went away.
No.
It's still very much here, but that was a big staple of 90s stories.
Well, yeah, that was the thing was he was he was definitely the Bat jerk in a lot of the stuff that he was in. Whether it was Justice League or whatever, and then various writers have come along to try and like sort of tone that down and put it more. I think Morrison does a lot of heavy lifting with it because the idea that Morrison has is the idea that the idea of a Batman family is not new. There's always been people around him, whether it's Alfred or Leslie or Dick or whoever.
Right.
That he's he has this whole image of I'm here up on this rooftop by myself, and then obviously he's never up there by himself.
Yeah. In the books, I mean, ultimately, like he would go to adopt Dick Grayson and Tim Drake and stuff like that and everything. They would actually be like his adopted children down the line and everything. But yeah, but when this came out, like in the books, there was still like the tension with him and Dick Grayson and, and stuff like that. And it seemed like almost like Tim didn't even know how much, if Bruce like really liked him.
Right. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah. And so there is a scent of that in this movie a little bit, that it is a little bit of a creature of its time, a bit, not in a bad way. I'm just saying, just acknowledging that it's there.
Is this a question for you, Zach? Do you think this is around? Was it 600? Is that the one where they have the fight?
Where Bruce and Dick fight?
Yeah.
It's pretty close,
right? Wouldn't it be?
Yeah.
Wouldn't we be at the same time?
Yeah. In the Batman Fugitive storyline stuff? Yeah. Pretty close.
It's right around. So again, it's one of those things where, they take Bruce about as far as they can with him, not instead of him being straight villain, but still being a straight jerk. They take it about as far as they possibly can, up to the point of like 600, I would say.
Yeah. It's a great scene. One of my favorites.
It's a terrific one. Scott McDaniel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff.
But this is a solid movie. This is a really, really great one. I really I remember a lot of this movie, and then there were some I forgot too that, it still surprised me a little bit again. It had been a couple of years since I've seen it.
Mm-hmm.
So, Yeah. All right. So to cool down, what we're going to do is we're going to name a character from the Timverse that we would all like to see return, like in Batman Beyond time. Right. But first, let me remind you listeners to please don't forget to subscribe to our show on whatever platform you find us. And please leave us a like and give us a review. It would really help us out too. If you subscribe to the YouTube channel as well, we would really appreciate it. So, all right. So cool down. Which Timverse character do you want to see in Batman Beyond? So I'm going to go to Tommy to start off. Who do you want?
No, I was going to say Nightwing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the most obvious one, I would think.
Yeah,
yep, we never got him.
No.
Not even the inkling. Oh no. Actually, other than this movie, we don't get even what he did, how he influenced in the direct relation to Gotham. Mm-hmm. Nothing.
Yeah, I think the funny thing about that is that in like we barely get him in the animated at all, really. Like we don't see him in we saw him like I remember were we watching this together, Zach, or do we like geek out at about the same time about it? The fact that it's in Grudge Match, right? Where they basically go over the bridge and you see him in shadow, in silhouette.
You had watched it the night before, and then watched it with me when I saw it for the first time.
that's
and I saw the red skies, and I was like, "Are we in Gotham?" And then you were like, "Wait."
Yeah.
And then we get the panoramic thing with Nightwing in the shadows.
Yeah.
Like, oh,
yeah. That's it, and that's it. That's all you get. Which I'm like, and I always wondered. It was, it's a question I'd love to have answered. The idea of like, what was the it sounded like it's almost like a moratorium on Nightwing. I never really understood why we didn't get more of him.
Yeah, that's the big. Well, I mean, like we really don't even get him that much in the season that he's introduced, and I think just at the time that maybe the writers didn't, have ideas for him. I don't know. I'm guessing that, For I've read a lot of Bruce Timm interviews, and from what I can gather is he tends to prefer like the Batman alone stuff,
Right.
But yeah, I mean, there's been like that long rumor forever that when Justice League was on, that there was like that the Bat embargo that they called it, where Teen Titans was another show going on at the same time, and The Batman was going on at the same time as Justice League, and so they were really funny about. We don't want like a lot of the Batman villains to show up in Justice League. So that's why like Joker's in until like season 2 and then doesn't show up again.
Right.
Right. And so that's the rumors that like the reason we don't get Nightwing and those guys is because there was a Teen Titans show where Dick Grayson was. And, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Nightwing would be a good one.
So, all right. So Clifton, you want to go next or Frank?
I can go.
Okay.
So one is an idea I had. I do know they've touched on this in one of the comics later, in the Justice League Beyond comic by Derek Friedolfs and Ben Caldwell. That was from 2012 or so. But going back to the episode we have of Batman Beyond that has a Justice League Beyond, where it's older Superman and a Green Lantern and an Aqua Girl.
Yeah,
right.
I thought another fun addition of somebody who could be around is Shazam. At that time.
Yes.
Yeah.
I love your Shazam idea.
In the comics, they touch on it and they do a different spin on it. They do an interesting spin where in the comics, what I know is when he does show up in Justice League Beyond number 24, he's still around by way of some sort of magic snafu that's like all of the people powered by the wizard Shazam, including Shazam, are kind of combined into one person. And different ones come out. When the magic word is said. So like it could be Shazam, it could be Billy, it could be Black Adam, it could be the Wizard.
That's cool.
But my idea that I had from that episode back when it was first on was that you have Shazam and just still Billy Batson, except Billy Batson would be 80 years old. So it would be like an old man who says the magic word and becomes the young idyllic superhero.
Nice.
So it's kind of like a reverse power fantasy instead of a kid imagining how great it is to be grown up. It's an old man remembering how great it is to be young.
It's so fantastic. Great. This is one of my favorite Clifton ideas ever. I'm like, yes, they should have done that. And I just imagine Billy, like 60-year-old Billy, is kind of like a jovial, like playful old man.
Right. Like he's still got the same good nature and sense of humor.
Right.
Just a jolly old man.
Yeah.
I like it.
I love the flip on that now he's an older man, like, you know, bringing his youth to, like, the saying of youth is wasted on it, you know.
Right.
You're right. Yeah.
Youth is wasted on the young.
Yep, exactly. Oh man, I love that idea so much. All right, Frank, who do you got?
I know this is going to sound like an idea out of left field, but hear me out.
Mm-hmm.
I like the idea of, because we get Raish, and Raish is one of those characters, obviously, that I always wanted to see what would, you know, I always like when Raish pops up and stuff beyond, no pun intended, the main Batman stuff. They've done like a Raish story with Legion, and I always thought that was kind of interesting to see, you know, 1,000 years in the future, what Raish would be doing. I wanted to see, and this is going to sound weird, I wanted to see the character Baby Doll show up in Batman Beyond.
Okay.
Because I like the idea of, like, where, you know, they do some interesting, weird kind of stuff in that last season when they bring her in. I think there's like, 2 episodes? There's the introduction, and then there's one with her and Croc, right?
Yeah.
And I like the character, and I like the idea of it. And I would love to see the idea of, you know, of where in 60 years this character is, because the fact that, you know, she's stuck, you know, being at that age and at that size, but obviously her mind is still going. And I always like the idea of seeing what, you know, I mean, granted, she's not immortal, but it's also one of those things of, I wonder how that would have played out and what she would be up to, because just the juxtaposition of Terry being a young Batman and Bruce being an old man versus this, you know, this poor girl who's trapped in still being, you know, a little girl sized.
Right. Yeah, but she's got an 80-year-old brain, basically, and they're 70-year-old brain. Yeah. Oh, that is from out of left field, but you've sold me on it.
Yeah,
I
thought it'd be kind of cool to see her pop up again.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. To me, it creeped me out.
Oh, she's creepy. Don't get me wrong.
No. It's because of Clifton, man. I'm thinking of Kira still.
Okay.
You see the old lady, the old girl, the little girl that turns old.
All the children with the powers.
Yeah, what's it, Pageria or something? Where she's just the old lady. Yeah, that's why I get your concept. I love the concept, but unfortunately, Clifton's idea of
put her in a hover chair.
Yeah, still permeates to that. Yeah,
I got
gosh,
it looks like a stroller. It's got to look like a stroller.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, it creeped me out.
Jesus. This is so great.
Yeah,
this is so great. I'm gonna need some spotting on this one. So, you know, everybody help me out, Frank. I know you've read this stuff. Mine's gonna be a little bit out of left field too. I'm gonna go with Jonah Hex.
Okay, that was one of my choices too. That was one of my choices as well.
So he shows up at Batman the Animated Series, but he's also at Justice League Unlimited in the time travel episode in part 1 where they go into the Old West, and then and ironically part 2 is in the Batman Beyond time.
Right.
But what I like about that bit is when you see Jonah Hex recognizes the time travel technology, and everybody's like, how do you know what this is? And he's like, I've led an interesting life. Right. And so for that, Frank, I'm just going to say, go. I'm going to let you do it.
So basically at one point right around Crisis in 86, DC decided that, I don't know, I've never gotten the backstory on it, but DC decided for whatever reason that Jonah Hex was, as a Wild West character, right, was kind of, I don't know if he was just kind of tired or they wanted to try something new. And Jonah Hex gets bumped, like basically shunted forward into kind of a dystopian future, kind of like Batman Beyond.
Right.
So basically he has, like, I think it's like the series lasts maybe like 13 or 14 issues. It might have gone a little longer. I'm not sure. But at the end of it, there's a point where he basically, and at one point he runs into Metamorpho from the Justice League Europe. There's a bit with that where they touch on that universe or those stories. But eventually he finds his body in a Wild West, like in a storage unit, like kind of like a museum kind of a thing, where he runs from the future. He runs into his body from the past, and he's like, well, I guess I get back to the West because that's where I end up. So, you know, and then they fold him back into being a Western character after this attempt to reboot him in the future. Yeah. So I think, Jonah Hex was on my list, and I thought it was a cool idea, but I was I think it would work perfectly. Yeah,
there's a precedent for it, clearly. Like, and it sounds like that they acknowledged it a little bit. They hinted at it,
right,
when he popped up. So thank you for that, Frank.
Yes, you're welcome.
Right?
No problem.
I think it's cool. So
yeah.
So all right. So tell us, guys, your experience with watching Return of the Joker. What did you love? What was your favorite scene? Tell us in the comments. Be sure to suggest a topic for the show while you're there. Also, please make sure to give us a like and leave us a review on whatever platform you may find us. As always, you can find links and examples to everything we talk about on letmeknowhowitis.com. And don't forget to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/letmeknowhowitis. And follow us on Twitter at our show's initials, LMKHII. Thanks for listening, and we will catch you next time.